when I was preparing for today, I Googled High Wycombe River, and I found the cutest 2-minute video. It had no voiceover, just, maybe you know it, just jolly trumpet music and subtitles. And it follows the River Wye from where it first appears in muddy ground to its becoming puddles, then tiny ponds, then a stream, and then a proper river flowing into the town lake and out again and onwards. The person who made that video obviously feels great affection and pride in your local river. And I would guess that you do too, just as I get a thrill at discovering tiny parts of lost rivers in North London where I live. On Thursday, I was following the River Crane as I walked part of the London Loop with a friend. We love rivers, don't we? And I'd like to ask you to spend a moment or two now recalling your favourite river or your favourite riverside spot and taking pleasure in the remembrance. Just savour the scene for a moment, taking in the sights and the sounds and the atmosphere and your own responses to it. You might like to close your eyes for what will be just a short silence. So on we go. You know because Terry sent me the order of service for the 3rd of September that the overarching theme for this year's season of creation is let justice flow like a river. After the opening service came Forest Sunday and then Land Sunday. Last week was Wilderness or Outback Sunday. I think you had Harvest, didn't you? Today we have Rivers again. I have to say I found the suggested Bible readings a bit short on stuff about rivers, and so I've changed them. But here are a few biblical rivers I remembered for myself. So you've got the 4 rivers that flow out of Eden in Genesis 2, the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. Then you've got the Nile, which thankfully bore baby Moses to safety in his little woven basket. There's the crossing of the River Jordan as the travelling people of God, after 40 years wandering, at last enter the promised land. There are all the rivers celebrated in the Psalms. We read some of them. And then there's the river, it's the Jordan again, that Elijah struck with his mantle before handing over his prophet's role to his successor, Elisha. Naaman, the general, bathed in the Jordan under protest, preferring the rivers of his homeland Syria, the Abana and the Pharpar, and he was cured of his leprosy anyway. Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan, and not a river, but the flowing water Jesus promised to the woman at the well in John 4 that we used for our call to worship and that we just remembered in our last hymn. Then there's the passage in John 7 that was your gospel on September the 3rd. Streams of living water will flow from within the believer. And finally, in my list, there's the river of the water of life in Revelation that we read about, with trees on its banks whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. Well, that's for starters. You can probably think of biblical rivers that I've forgotten. Anybody got a biblical river that stands out for them? Maybe I got the main references. Rivers, and especially the Jordan, run through the whole Bible. It's hard to imagine how the Old and New Testaments could tell their story without them. And what do the rivers of the Bible represent? Prosperity, because of the much needed water they provide. Cleanliness, healing, justice. The work of God as the Spirit flows into our lives and out again. A blessing to others. We love rivers, and of course we need them. We need them for water, for our own drinking, washing, cooking, and for agriculture. We need rivers for mobility, and we need them to sustain other species living in or out of the water. We need them to keep flowing, and we need them to be clean. We need them to be contained. Spain, I discovered, has very few rivers, and it's a serious problem, making the country especially vulnerable to drought. And it also delayed the creation of a strong centralised state in the last centuries until roads and rail were well established to allow for mobility. We love rivers and we need them, but we haven't looked after them. Anna Barrett's Season of Creating Walking project, she wrote about it. You may have read it in the Synod News at the beginning of the month. This shows something of how. Anna, like Terry and me, is one of our Synod Green team. And so for her Season of Creation project, she walked from the source of her local river, the Ver in St Albans, to where it joins the Colne. Like many other small rivers, the Ver only flows at source after heavy rain, and there's a threat that it may dry up. And as a chalk stream, it's a rare and valuable habitat for many species. In contrast, Anna took a walk to the Thames Barrier, which is being used more and more, much more than predicted, because of rising sea levels, and which will have to be replaced well ahead of schedule. We are reaping the results of our neglect. To the Holy Land. How many times did the River Jordan come up in our whiz through biblical rivers? Sadly, today, the Jordan is diminishing. And this time the human injustice involved is blatant. Israel diverts much of the water of the Jordan to the Israeli-only settlements, leaving Palestinian villages forced to buy bottled water they can ill afford. And then the Jordan flows into the Dead Sea, the lowest place on earth, where the water level is dropping rapidly and visibly, and the water could eventually dry up. How unfair. And what a poor way to remember the watercourse that means so much in our Christian history. We love rivers, and we need them. And we have taken them for granted and let them dry up or overflow. It is we in the rich and industrialized West who have done the damage, and the poorer nations of Africa and Asia, think Libya, think Bangladesh, who are suffering the terrible consequences in terms of loss of life, land, livelihood, much more severely than we are. What must we do? Well, you and I have a lot of answers to that question. We're already on the path, I think. I want to congratulate this church on being one of the 11 churches in the Synod to have achieved Bronze Eco Church Award, and to encourage you to let your environmental work be right at the centre of your church life, and to go on, if possible, to achieve silver and gold. That's a great witness to this town and to other churches in the synod. Congratulations too on the grants you've won for roofing and for a full energy audit. And I'm sure you're all constantly re-examining your personal lives and the way you travel to produce less carbon, less plastic, less waste, to waste less water. There will almost certainly be a general election next year, and that's a great opportunity to tell the candidates what's important to us, to slow down climate change. I don't know about you, but writing to politicians always takes me out of my comfort zone. We should do it anyway. It's beyond urgent. Good to take to the streets too, with those who are crying out for justice and for a future for the young people in our lives and their children. It's a tough situation that needs facing up to, needs honest discussion, needs action and protest. But let's end where we began. It's our baptism going down into the river water that motivates us to care for the world Christ died to save. It's our times of quiet when we experience streams of living water flowing into us and out again, when we connect to the spring of healing water welling up to eternal life. It begins with the life of the Spirit, so generously available to us in Jesus. We are invited to bathe freely in the grace of God, to drink deep, to give ourselves over to its current. Then maybe we will be among those who cause justice to flow like a river in the world, and who by our lives nourish trees whose leaves are for the healing of the whole of creation. Let's keep silence for a moment.